Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Cloud Computing Show for the C-Suites with Brad Nelson and internationally recognized and world's #1 cloud industry expert and thought leader, David Linthicum. This show is sponsored by Nelson Hilliard, cloud computing recruitment specialists, placing great people in cloud, IoT, fintech and AI. In this week's show, David and I will be talking about cloud computing revenues reaching $554 billion by 2021. Hi Dave, great to have you on the C-Suite show. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. And, IDC every couple of months comes out with these sort of reports where, it keeps getting up and to the moon and things like that. And it's interesting that they're, kind of monitoring something that's really kind of self-evident. And of course, the questions I think we need to ask ourselves is what does this include? And also, what kind of impact this should have on the CEOs, the CTOs, and the CFOs, within the boardrooms to figure out whether or not they need to move to cloud or not. And, and is this basically something that should be a motivator or something that should be concerning?
Yeah, absolutely. It really could be a concern if you're not on board already, and it poses the question, should C-levels who still are sitting on that very uncomfortable fence right now, should they be on the cloud or should they be following the crowd? It really is a compromising thing that people have held back, but when you've got reports like this coming out, it really is a daunting factor for their credibility if they haven't chosen a provider or at least allocated some budget in order to endeavour to move into some form of cloud, whether it be the public, private, shared, hybrid, pluggable, whatever option they take. They've got to take some option. Get off the bloody fence.
Yeah, and there are a lot of CEOs and CFOs and CTOs and CIOs and all the C-level folks that are still on the fence in terms of cloud computing. And the thing is, this is kind of a double-edged sword. So number one, I can use it to really kind of beat them into submission in the fact that the world is moving in this direction and that you should be looking at this heavily in terms of how you're going to move. But, they would say some healthy skepticism in terms of, okay, well, I see that's the way things are going. However, I'm not sure that, this is going to be right for my company all in. I need to do some tactical things first and kind of prove it out. And I think that's all well and good as well. However, the boat that they could be missing is they're unable to disrupt the market that they're in. So cloud computing at the end of the day is a strategic technology that people are able to leverage to, in essence, become more agile and quicker at what they do. It's not necessarily cost efficiency. It's not necessarily, scalability and elasticity, which is kind of the old school way in which we look at cloud. So if their value is to get into a market in a very flexible and quick moving way and disrupt it, a la Uber and Netflix and things like that, we've talked about that on the show, then I think that should be really kind of the compelling reason to look at cloud. And they need to kind of wrap this into a larger strategy in terms of where their businesses are going, things like that. And of course, it largely depends on what kind of businesses that they're in. If they're in financial services and high technology, cloud can truly provide disruptive technology to take them to the next level. If they're a tire plant in the middle of the country in the United States, probably not as much. And so this is a time really that the C-suite should be in self-reflection. So what have I done for the company in terms of looking at the enabling technology this year, whether it's cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, fintech, Bitcoin, all these other things that are going on right now in terms of technology trends. I wouldn't say you have to hop on the trends that come forward all the time, but I would say that you need to basically look at what this technology can bring to your business and making sure you're evaluating the value as it's brought into the company. And I think that's something that the C-suite should be reflecting right now. And if they're not, I think they're failing their company. That doesn't mean they have to move into cloud computing, but that certainly means they have to take a look at what's there and what's able to provide value to their existing way of doing the business.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. If you're not paying attention to the reports that are coming in that are showing the the such speed of growth that people are adopting, cloud infrastructures, etc. It's really quite a daunting thing. I mean, there's only a report out not so long ago by the International Data Corporation, and that found that public cloud services will account for 48% of all cloud-related expenditures by 2021, and that figure was actually 41% higher on last year. So it really, when you see those sort of figures, it really does show you where people are going, not only with obviously public cloud, but also with their shared or hybrid or private clouds as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's not something you speculate on as a trend that may or may not appear. It's already here, and it's already, many billions, hundreds of $billions in terms of the market. And we're seeing these things all the time. People send me predictions in terms of where cloud computing market's going, the services, cloud computing technology, things like that. And lo and behold, it's always going to be inflecting like a hockey stick, going forward. But this really kind of gets into the way to the core notion that the C-level should provide, and that should be, how does this affect my business, and whether or not I should jump on the bandwagon with everybody else, or basically do some things that are a bit more conservative than some of the other people in the industry are doing. That said, I think there's going to be a lot of CEOs, just basically like there were in the 90s when they missed the internet trend. They're going to miss the cloud computing trend and end up having their competition, beat them into the ground with different innovative technology, able to move faster, more efficient use of technology, agility, time to market, compress, things like that. And they're going to be, very much like Barnes and Noble was here. Borders was here, back, 10 years ago. They were kind of reduced to complacency, and they got their butts kicked. Or certain video stores when Netflix came around, they just didn't understand the current trends and weren't able to adapt to kind of the new ways of the market. Really went whistling past the graveyard, which is kind of a term that means we're not paying attention to what's going on and not doing the job as C-level leaders within their organization. So that's the risk here. And it'd be interesting to see where we are in 5 years in terms of the upheaval and how those companies are going to survive. And if they're going to be able to disrupt their markets, or they're going to basically play the conservative round and kind of watch everybody, chew them up and spit them out. I remember having arguments with, CEOs of retail organizations, back in the late 90s, when Amazon was just basically a new idea that was coming up. You could buy a book on there, but it just, and I could be wrong, and they have a right to be wrong in what they do, but ultimately you have to kind of look at what are the best data points out there to point you in the right direction. And when the trends are very solid and really kind of understandable, which they are with cloud computing right now, you're compelled to at least ask the questions that need to be asked within the organization versus just ignoring it. And so C-levels, probably going to be out of a job. A lot of levels are going to be out of a job in the next 3 or 4 years by missing these trends. The shareholders could revolt, and the board of directors are going to revolt and knock them out of their employment.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a fearful time. Even if you're not embracing the commitment to cloud, just sitting on the fence and not identifying the trends or where the reports are taking the industry is, it's criminal. It's criminal to think that people are put into management positions and they're not even aware of what trends are, or when you speak to C-levels and you get horrified. I mean, you and I have spoken off camera. We're not going to name names because we spoke off camera, but I know for a fact that you were horrified to hear some of the stories coming back. I mean, if we just flicked back to what you said about the tire industry, which is obviously a $1 billion industry, and there's some figures around manufacturing, which is actually quite interesting in the manufacturing sector for cloud computing. And there, I think it was a report done by KPMG Global Manufacturing Outlook, and they discovered that there's 62% manufacturers that are focused on that growth in cloud just alone.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's more than a trend. It's something that really should be looked at seriously. And we've had these things before. I mean, the first kind of wave of automation that occurred in the 60s and the 70s. And companies being very slow to get on board and automate their existing systems. And I think a lot of companies kind of went away, while other companies chose to invest in automating things that weren't automated already. And so when you take that to different levels, and of course there are instances where the technology really kind of didn't live up to expectations, and there's lots, dozens of areas in history we can look at making that happen. But the movement into automation, the movement into the web, so we can have access to information as we need it on demand, and the movement into cloud computing so we can leverage systems that we typically leverage within data centers, on demand out of the public cloud, are kind of the three waves of IT that are coming forward. And either you can get ahead of it, figure out a way it's going to work for your company, or you're going to just die the death of 1,000 cuts. And that's on you. That's not on the industry. That's not on people being unfair. It's just kind of the way things go.
Yes, exactly right. The way the industry is moving incredibly fast, incredibly fast. So, I mean, look at it this way. I mean, to sort of close on this one, Dave, I mean, the fence isn't a very comfortable place to sit, but I'm guessing sitting in front of the stakeholders when the business is failing equally isn't a very comfortable place to be sitting either. So it's a case of just do or die, really, isn't it, to be honest?
Yeah, I think they don't move when they're looking to move. They're going to find that that's as bad as doing the wrong thing. So I think stakeholders and the stockholders and the boards of directors out there would rather see them try something and fail than sit and do nothing and kind of watch the market eat them alive.
Absolutely. Identifying failure is the quickest way we all can succeed. And how about that for an upbeat end to the show?
Sounds good to me.
Dave, thanks for being part of the C-Suite show again. We've tried to keep it nice and light-hearted. Fascinating thing though, it really is, it's quite baffling really that the C-Suites aren't necessarily embracing cloud, or at least trying to embrace cloud. So thanks, a great topic this week, really enjoyed it. Thanks Dave, thanks for being part of the C-Suite show.
My pleasure. Go out there and take a look at cloud if you haven't already, guys, because it's important.
It is important, and C-Suites, if you are out there obviously watching the show, which we hope you all are, please drop us a line. David's on Twitter at David Linthicum, and I'm on Twitter also at Nelson_Hilliard. We're happy to have your comments, likes, and subscribe to the other videos as well. And we can help you directly with ideas about cloud if you haven't made that decision just yet. It's imminent, I'm sure. So thanks again, Dave. It's great, and thanks everyone for watching this show. And stay tuned for next week's show. We've got some really cool things coming up. Special guests galore coming up in 2018, so that's awesome, and thanks again for watching.